Buckle up, Buttercup. Live from Gloucester, Massachusetts. Podcasting around the world. You're listening to the GloucesterCast podcast, a production of Joey Shimataro and Good Morning Gloucester Media. Kick back, relax, and enjoy the show with your host, Joey Shimataro, and his crew of merry castaways. No piping plovers will be intentionally harmed in the production of this podcast.
Jesus, we got.
Oh, we didn't hear any thoughts or anything.
Let's start over. Hello, folks. Good morning, Gloucester.
We have a very prestigious guest with us, Sian Heder, director and writer of Sundance, 4 awards in Sundance. But the big, you took the big one.
We took the big one, which was amazing. I mean, we won, and it was weird because it was all Zoom. You know, it was virtual this year.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just sitting at home, and they keep like Zooming me and going. And I kept running outside to tell my husband, like, we just won, you know, an acting ensemble award, and then like we just won the audience award, and then I just won best director, and then I run out again. He's like, you're kidding me, and I'm like, no, we won the grand jury. It was amazing.
So what
Sian Heder,
was he doing yard work?
He was totally doing yard work. You're so right.
That seems bananas to me. I would be glued to the team. I would be glued. I would not be able to leave, like to know.
Well, it was all like we were like it was this interesting thing where I was kind of having to be like doing Q&As in my little office. I have a 5 and 7-year-old, so it was also like they were in and out. So he was probably wrangling them to make sure they didn't like walk naked into camera.
You did all this. Wait, Sian, did I say your name? But while we had audio, Sian Heder.
Yes.
Movies CODA. How
CODA.
do you say? You call it CODA? Children of Deaf Adults.
So CODA, it's sort of a double meaning in the movie. It stands for Children of Deaf Adults, which is what is the term for, you know, any hearing child born into a deaf family. So that's a term that I didn't really know is a very common term in deaf culture and the deaf community. But it's also a double meaning because it's a musical term. And a coda is the ending of a piece of music. And there's a lot of music in the film, and Ruby, who's the lead character, wants to be a singer and wants to go off and pursue her dreams. And it's sort of, because the movie's about the end of her childhood and her leaving home, it was sort of like the CODA musical term also felt like it really fit well.
Yeah, for those people who are just checking in on all that or looking up the CODA film, it was filmed here in Gloucester.
Yes, in Gloucester. It's a love letter to Gloucester. Truly it is.
Wow. Certainly is.
I was pretty instrumental in the filming because Joe Boll had asked me to move my boat for a scene.
And you did.
And I did.
Which was I really appreciate it.
Do they give like Super Bowl rings if you win a Sundance? Does he qualify for a ring?
I want no credit whatsoever.
I could get you like a hat, maybe.
Well, Jimmy was instrumental in the Mets quadruple D parking lot farm team. He's a parking lot attendant for the Mets in upstate New York, and he got a ring when they won.
When they won, yeah.
Well, hopefully, like this, because we were all in Gloucester, you know, and when I was location scouting, every single person whose house we scouted was like, I was in the church scene in The Perfect Storm. Like,
I was in
everyone
the
needed-
church scene in The Perfect
Were you?
Storm. I
Well,
was.
there
I
you
was
go.
snoring in the back. It was so hot during filming.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
well,
funny.
everybody had a
900
Perfect Storm story. So I'm like, well, now you can be like, I was at the bar in Pratty's in the background in CODA, and maybe we can
That's
have
cool.
like another Gloucester movie come out.
So since you mentioned Pratty's right now, and did you film the scene in Pratty's?
Yes.
Now, what is it about Pratty's that makes it so desirable for location scouts to make that? Because Kenny Chesney recently filmed a video there with Knowing You. Was it Manchester by the Sea? It's filmed Deadliest Catch, various other film. What makes that so desirable as a director and a location scout?
I gotta say, Pratty's is kind of cinematic. Like when you walk in, those two rooms, and then you've got that window through the bar, and you've got that wood, and there's like interesting. So it's like for that feeling, like if you actually go, because I remember I talked my way into the St. Peter's Club, and I was like, oh, this is not cinematic enough to shoot. It was like that,
The cinder block walls.
You sort of want you want that feeling that feels like there's something warm about it. It can feel like a divey bar, but also feel cool and warm, and like there's interesting angles in different spaces.
So when you choose a space for location and you get a script and you get a screenplay and you know the scene, you visualize this ahead of time and you know what you're looking for, or do you walk into a room and say,
this will work,
is it,
and I'll work around that?
Well, both. So like, I mean, it's interesting because I knew Gloucester really well, and I was here when I was writing the script, and I very rarely do you get to shoot in the place that you wrote the movie for. And they were trying to get me to shoot in Canada because there's tax credits in Canada. So they're like, go up and shoot, Nova Scotia and pretend it's Gloucester. And I fought really hard to shoot the movie here because I was like, I would love to use the town as a character in the movie.
Well,
but what that means is, and I've shot things. I remember being in like Atlanta and you're shooting it for Florida and you've got people throwing Spanish moss into the trees trying to pretend that you're in Florida and you can't shoot this and you can't point your camera anywhere. But the awesome thing about shooting in the town that you wrote it for is you can discover these locations. I remember one day we like lost a location and we were down in Lanes Cove and I was like, well, let's just shoot it in Lanes Cove, let's just shoot it here. I wandered in here trying to shoot with you guys because our offices were like, 3 doors down. And I was like, this is a cool spot. Like, can we shoot here?
The smell too bad?
It was really the smell.
Yeah,
I was
smell.
like, I can't. No, I think you guys were too busy, actually. You were like, not.
Joey was too busy for you?
I think, well, it wasn't Joey that I talked to.
Frank. No, but
You could have been
it's
famous.
tough.
You could have been
No,
famous.
Well, when you're running a business, it is tough. I mean, so when you're all right, so that's a great question. When you go to a location like Pratty's and you do a filming and they do a shutdown for you, do you find that sometimes they offer it up, or other times is there a major shutdown cost for you to be able to shoot there within your budget?
Well, like we shot at Connolly's, and so it was like, how are we gonna let them stay open? So we took 3 boat, half their pier, and so boats were coming in and unloading. And we had to time it right for when we were filming. But I liked having that in the background. I liked having real boats coming in and they're working the lifts and, everything to get because you get this, it's like production value that you could never get if you were trying to. And then I'm grabbing real fishermen and putting them in the movie because they looked more authentic than my extras.
Well, what I found interesting was that the 2 parents and the brother of the main character, they're deaf, they're deaf people. And you actually used deaf characters.
Deaf actors.
Deaf actors, not characters. And you did not know how to sign before you took on this project. So
I started studying sign during when I started writing the script because I knew a lot of it was going to be in ASL and I didn't have a knowledge of the language, and I thought I should really have like a basic understanding, but it's really different when you're studying with a teacher in a class situation than you get on set. And so we had a lot of interpreters on set, to make the set accessible, but that's a hard thing between a director and an actor because that relationship is really close. And when you're giving an acting note, it's so personal and you have to be so careful with your words. And the first day when we were shooting, there was an interpreter there and my actors were looking at the interpreter. So Troy and Daniel and Marley were looking at the interpreter and I was sort of like, oh my God,
I'm
so much is
disconnected.
happening on my face. I feel disconnected. I feel like I don't know what words this person's choosing. And so I went to Daniel and Troy and Marley and I said, can I just sign with you directly? And sometimes it's going to be, on point. And sometimes it's probably going to be ridiculous and you can make fun of me all you want, but like, let's try to do this. And then the interpreter will be right there and they can jump in if we're having issues. And it was amazing. Like I learned to sign so fast.
Wow.
We also just got into, we have so many ways to communicate as human beings and like we don't use them because we're so reliant on talking, but you realize texting actually has been great for the deaf community because it's like it's opened up a lot of FaceTime, all these technology. But it was amazing, and I really did learn to sign really fast, and we just developed a super close bond. And then, those guys had to learn to fish. So Daniel and Troy and Amelia, who played Ruby, their family is Gloucester fishermen, and they're draggers. So they had to, in order to look authentic, go out and in rehearsal, learn how to run a boat and learn how to, and I remember Daniel couldn't tie a knot to save his life, and Troy was teasing him, and he'd just work on tying knots so he could look like he was really fast. And we had Joe Borland, and we had, Smash.
There's some characters.
We had some characters.
There's some characters.
Smash was like, I'm going to teach these guys to fish. And then it was really interesting also to have, like, those guys have to learn how to communicate because there's a lot of signs that fishermen used on boats, like stop the winch or because it's loud. Right. And so it was interesting to kind of watch how everybody learned to communicate, where Smash was like, well, this is the sign we use for, bringing in the doors.
What kind of a sign do you use for like end scene? So like, when to like, let's go again,
well,
or like
stop. I was calling action, just, action.
So if you're shooting at a certain angle and they're not paying attention, or do they read us on the script? They know about when to stop.
There were moments where it was challenging. We did a Coast Guard boarding scene out at sea where we had a, TJ, harbor master, who's done 1 million Coast Guard boardings. And Joe Borland was driving the boat, and it was a very high speed action. I mean, we really did it where they were pulling up alongside and boarding. And the scene is that, the father and son, Frank and Leo, who's played by Troy and Daniel, are on the boat and they've got their heads down and they're sorting fish on deck, and they don't hear the Coast Guard radio, and then they don't, until the Coast Guard jumps on board, they don't know that the Coast Guard's coming.
Just gave the movie away.
It was a big spoiler alert. I'm sorry. But the interesting part of that scene was that there were a lot of moving parts where, Paul's boat is a small boat, the Angela Rose, so we couldn't really have more than, 10. I think we probably pushed it and had 15 people on that boat.
And not be in the shot.
People are like on the floor, like hiding behind different stuff. And when we did that scene, I remember feeling like, fishing's really dangerous just in general. You're out in the open water. We had 3 to 5 foot waves one day. And like, you're doing boat to boat transfers, to get your crew onto the boat and off.
Dangerous.
It's dangerous. And you've got people that have never been at sea too. So you've got your makeup person trying to jump boat to boat to, fix the actors.
They don't have that confidence to be able to lead.
We were talking to some of the cameramen at the banquet after it, and they were all telling us that it was so hard.
It was
to
intense.
do it with the scene, and some of them didn't do so well. They were getting sick.
Oh, well, what's interesting is we'd gone out a lot in rehearsal, and I'm someone that gets sick so easily. Like, as a kid, I was car sick all the time. Every time I took a trip, I'm just like a nauseous person. And I was so afraid of being out at sea. But we went out, I went out and fished with Paul a bunch of times. I went out in rehearsal with my actors, and I was fine. And I was like, oh, I'm good.
Everybody else should be good, too.
The day that we were filming, I didn't count on the fact that I'd be looking at a monitor.
Oh, yeah.
So I had the director's monitor, and I'd been out, but I'd been like, participating and because I was looking at this monitor, we were heading out, and I was like, the crew was making bets on who would be the first person to puke. And I'm like staring at this monitor, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I'm so sick. And I thought the director cannot be the first person to go. Like, if the director goes, like, we're done. And I remember I just like shoved my mouth with ginger gum, and everybody's like, go look at the horizon, go look at the horizon. I just like stood on deck, and I was like, I will not. I mean, I was like sheer force of will, like, I am not gonna puke. And I didn't. I like made it. I somehow worked through it, and then I think like a makeup person went, an interpreter went. It was just like
that's what Scotty's known for.
because he won't be the first one to throw up. But if he sees someone throw up, then he's done.
Weak stomach. Weak stomach. Weak stomach.
I felt, and I was lucky that my actors, you hire these actors, but you don't know if they're going to be able to handle themselves out on a boat. And like Troy and Daniel, Troy's been on boats before, Daniel, they just did so well. I mean, they learned how to run that boat. We were actually fishing, we were cool. Out there with Paul. We were using his, his day of fishing, and we were out there fishing with him. The craziest part was we had an observer in the movie, an observer character who goes out on the boat. And, every morning we had to call in to see if Paul actually had an observer. And there was one day that we were filming where we had an observer assigned to us. So we had this woman show up, and there was the woman in the movie playing the observer. And then there was the actual observer on the boat. And it was just the funny, this woman had no idea she was going to be like a part of a movie.
You got a free technical advisor at that point.
Exactly. And we're like, hey, you want to have lunch on our main boat? But
they sold the movie for $25 million, but they gave the thing a free lunch.
Joey, why don't we
now you know how we feel.
Let everybody know exactly who we're dealing with here today for those people just joining us, and maybe do a roll call.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a great idea. Sian Heder.
Yes.
four wins at Sundance, which I don't have to explain what Sundance is, right?
No, I don't think so. While she was inside her house, probably enjoying herself.
It's true.
4 wins.
It's true.
And filmed CODA in Gloucester boats, all in the community. I had a question though, like as far as independent filmmaking, how do you get you had some success previously.
How do you get people to give you money?
No, but you get the thing made. But Apple is it Apple TV bought this?
Yeah.
Apple TV bought this, but you made that movie not knowing where it was going to go, right?
Oh no, it's risky.
Right.
Yeah.
So someone has to have real faith in you.
My first movie, I made a movie called Tallulah in 2016 that also went to Sundance, but that movie was it was a smaller movie, and but it took a long time to get investors. You're asking for millions of, you're asking for people to give you a lot of money, and you're kind of an unproven person. So my first movie, it took me 8, almost 9 years to get made. It was just a lot of going around trying to convince someone to invest in you. And that movie sold and made money back too. Yeah. So I think you also then start to have a track record where it's like, oh, this other financier who put money in. But this was a bigger movie. I mean, it's still a small independent movie, but a bigger budget where you're risking money, and there was no distributor in place. So it is a risky venture because you're kind of going, you're putting the money into the movie. It's a lot of faith in the person's going to pull it off and come up with a good product. And you don't know, the movie might not have gone to Sundance, and then it might not have sold at Sundance. So there were a lot of nerves on this one going into Sundance. It was sort of pacing around my house, oh, this has got to...
This is make or break almost.
This sort of make or break because, it's not my money, but at the same time, it's
your future.
My future, and people believing in me as an investment. And so, but there was a bidding war at Sunday. I mean, it was amazing. It was.
That was my next question. Was Apple Apple must have been the best deal, obviously, that you went with. But how do you get your ducks in a row? And how many people? You must have had multiple offers. Like you said, a bidding war. You don't have to mention who, but I mean, how many people were actually going for CODA at that point?
There were a lot of people.
Wow.
It was cool. I mean, when you're at Sundance, it's literally you have your screening at the Eccles, and then you see little groups of people huddle up, and everybody's kind of getting together to decide what they're going to offer on the movie. So it actually almost feels like a live auction happening.
Wow.
And you have a film rep there who's in charge of this sale and this business thing. But I got a call after we screened. I got a call from my agents, and they said, "Get ready for a really long night. You cannot go to bed. You have to stay by your phone because this might go on all night, and we're going to have to make deals probably in the middle of the night." And it had been COVID for a year. I've been home with my kids. I was I haven't stayed up past 10 o'clock.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't even know how long. And it was 4 a.m. And I was, taking Zoom meetings with different distributors who were streamers and, who were trying to, And like, I remember lying on my couch. It was like 4 a.m. I had my phone by my head, and I was like, I'm just gonna close my eyes for a minute because I'm like, I can't do it. I'm not like, you know.
You're not built for that. Yeah.
But luckily, I had people out there who kept going. They literally stayed up all night, and then Apple won. You know, they won the movie, but I also loved what they had to say about the movie, which is they're Apple. Like, they have the ability to not just put this movie in the world, but like change kind of life for the deaf community in a lot of ways. If they made this a movement, if they, you know, have the technology to put out certain apps or create kind of like a bigger conversation around that. So I was just excited by the reach of that company and what they could do.
Were they, like, I'm sure going into this, there was a company you had hoped would win the business. Were they the number one?
I went in really open. Like, I was sort of ready to hear what everybody had to say. But I'd worked with Apple before because I run a show on Apple called Little America.
Okay.
So I'd had an experience with them and really liked my experience of working with them. I felt like they trusted us and let us make the show.
Did that help you in making your decision?
Yeah.
With CODA?
Yes.
And you probably say, hey, listen, I have future projects coming up. Was the money want to maybe support my next project?
Yes,
Okay.
and they have. So I'm like, now I'm on an overall with them on the TV side, and so I'm developing shows for them, and so it's just a bigger relationship, which is cool. But everybody does think that I got that $25 million, which is hilarious.
Oh, because the investors.
So all of my mom's friends are like, "You're so rich now," and I'm like, "Oh no, it wasn't my money. I didn't put my money in the movie." But it was amazing. I mean, Sundance, like, it was an amazing experience. And I went in like, because it was going to be virtual, I was like, I don't know what this is going to be. Is anyone going to watch the movie? Is it going to turn into anything? And it was just amazing. The only sad thing was that I couldn't celebrate with my cast.
But from this point onward, they can't take that away from you. You're forever to be known as Sundance award-winning director, writer, Sean Heder. So that's pretty friggin' awesome.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And it just, like, I think that festival has really supported me through my career. You know, my first movie was there, and it's just cool. And also Sundance this year was virtual, but what it meant is, like, usually Sundance is like this exclusive Hollywood thing, and you go up and it's just people who can be in Park City and afford a condo there. And, you know, and it's this year it's like Paul Vitale, the captain of the boat, watched with his big family here in Gloucester. You know, my mom's friends watched.
We should give a huge shout out, because I heard the job that Patrick heard and the people at Cape Ann Marina did for the party.
It was so fun.
It was amazing.
It was amazing.
It was. They knocked it out of the park.
And I did not eat a lobster tail or an oyster. I was too busy talking to everybody, and I'm like, I missed out on the amazing food.
Yeah, no, they had a lot of staff there. The food was awesome. It was just a nice venue. Boy, the space was perfect for that size group.
I heard it was a good night.
Yeah, they did a good job.
I am remiss. I didn't go because I had to get up at 3. And I was like, Pat, you want to go because I can't make it.
You could have done it. You could have done it.
Whenever Joe goes,
I am regretful.
whenever he goes to a theater, when the lights go down, his eyelids go down.
No, not theaters. Movies. I stay away from movies, like the English friggin' theater that they make me go, and that's why when they do the fake accent, then I'm fucking out like a light. I can't do it. It's just but it's not relatable. This movie, like, relatable on so many different levels.
It is.
Can you tell the story about? So it's about this family. 3 of the members are deaf, and the main character is Ruby is not deaf, and she basically has all through been put into situations from a very young age of being the interpreter and having to deal with these very adult situations for her parents, because you go to a lawyer, the lawyer doesn't know how to sign and communicate. So she's the go-between and having to deal with very, awkward situations, but
There's a great scene in the movie that's exactly that with the doctor.
But the reason I'm saying this is because I want to
ruin it.
No surprises. I won't give away any surprises.
I didn't know they were in a doctor's office.
So, ruined it. Forget it.
Spoiler alerts brought to you by Pound
No, please let me get to my thought. So, after saying all that, can you talk to the what's so relatable, especially in communities where there's a lot of immigrants, when you talk to Angela Sanfilippo.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very moving. So we had this amazing screening, and I will say, the movie is opening in theaters too, and I've made sure that there's like a real presence in the Boston area because it is such a local movie. So it's going to be opening at Gloucester Cinemas, and that was I was so impressed with that screening. It looked great. It sounded great. I was excited for that. And Angela Sanfilippo came up to me after the screening, and she came up to me in the bathroom, and she was a consultant for me with a lot of the fishing stuff. So she was big on like helping me to understand what was happening, the fights that have been happening with the fishermen and NOAA and the regulations. And so she came up to me after the movie and she was crying, and she said, I want you to know I saw myself on screen. And I said, oh, is it because of the fishing stuff? I really thought that was the part. She's an activist and she's really fought for the fishermen here. And I said, was it because of this fishing stuff? And she said, no, it's because my parents were immigrants. They didn't speak any English. She said, I was interpreting for them my whole life. And I realized after a while that I had to be my own person. I had to go out in the world, and I had all this guilt about leaving my family and feeling like I was abandoning them, but I had to take care of myself at a certain point. And she said, and I just have never seen my experience on screen. And it was so moving to me because, the story is about a deaf family and about a young woman in a deaf family, but I really think it's a universal thing for anybody who's kind of felt like they, that their parents needed them in that way. And I think the other thing I will say is that, part of it is when you're in a small town, the accessibility to interpreters, if that family had been in New York City, or, you go to a hospital, you go to a local clinic, there's an interpreter there that you go to but in a lot of these places that are smaller towns, and if you don't have financial means, you're relying on favors from family or friend or people who know how to sign to help you kind of navigate the world. And so it's a very specific, I want to be clear, it's like not the experience of all CODAs, but I think in this particular case, this is the family that the parents came to rely on their daughter because it seemed easier within this town that they're in. And the brother is pissed about it. And he feels like his parents shouldn't be relying on his sister and could rely on him. And he's comfortable navigating the hearing world, and he's pissed off that they won't kind of give him more responsibility within the family. And so it's an interesting brother-sister tension too, because he's pissed that they've developed this kind of codependent relationship that doesn't need to be happening.
When you go into writing a script, or does it start out as a script, or does it start out as a book for you personally? And then like how do you take that idea and then create these situations through research? Can you bring us through that for a moment?
Yeah, I mean, so this movie was based on a French film called La Famille Bélier, and it was originally a French movie, and then the producers wanted to do an American version of the movie. And so in the French movie, I think they were dairy farmers or something in a small town in France. And because I grew up in the area and I came up to Gloucester a lot as a kid, and I pitched, I went in and said, what if they were Gloucester fishermen? What if this was a family of draggers? And they were sort of struggling with their livelihood. And that was, because I wanted to shoot a movie back at home. It's really a fun process when you do that. My parents are in the movie. My high school friends. I'm not in the movie.
You don't make an appearance?
I do not make an appearance in the movie.
A lot of times directors will sneak themselves in somewhere.
I know. I'm too busy on set. I'm like, I don't have time. I don't have time to do that.
Cutting room floor.
Well, the time when you're doing it too is you're filming it. I drove by on my little boat when you guys were over at Connolly's and was kind of in the background, kind of watching how it was going down. And not a bad time of year to be in Gloucester.
Oh my God, the best!
Right?
The best.
Yeah.
It was like beautiful.
Selfishly, well, let's do it in. Let's do the next one in Hawaii. Maybe. Figure something out around some Hawaiian coffee farmers or something. Yeah.
But no, it's hectic. But to answer your question, I mean, I had to do a lot of research because I think, I liked the premise of the original French movie, but I didn't feel like the deaf characters were fully developed. I didn't feel like deaf culture was fully represented. And I was an outsider. And so I felt like if I'm going to come in and represent this culture, I really need to understand it. And I really need collaborators that are deaf, because as a hearing person, I'm always going to be coming in with a hearing perspective. I'm never going to be able to fully understand that experience. Yeah. And so I had two amazing, not only was my cast deaf, so I had 3 deaf actors, but I had 2 collaborators who were called my ASL masters. And there were these 2 women, Ann Tomasetti and Alexandria Wales, and they came in and they were 2 deaf women who have experience kind of in theater and doing this kind of translations, and then not just translations, but really being my deaf eyes on set. And there were times, we were shooting in a house out in Canoma Point, and this family's house, and we'd set up the living room. And I remember Anne walking into the set and going, no deaf family would set up their furniture like this because the couch is facing away from the door. And any family is going to want to see the entrances and exits because you don't know who's walking into your house. And suddenly we're moving around the furniture.
So it's very detailed in that sense.
I mean, it's detailed. And thank God, actually, I had those collaborators because I wouldn't have known that. And, even in all your research and however much you dig in, you can miss all kinds of stuff like that. And I feel, you feel a big responsibility because I think especially right now as an outsider coming in and trying to represent a community that's been marginalized and also like misrepresented a lot. Like, I think there's a lot of sensitivity of like, the what you've seen on screen of people with disabilities or deaf people has been harmful sometimes because it's like, either they're the victim who you're supposed to feel sorry for, the object of pity, or it's so noble that it's like, oh, I could never be you. How do you do it? And it's breaking those tropes and making sure that these feel like fully fleshed out characters who are, fishermen first and deaf second, they're from the town. They have this history of, so it was really important. And I was so lucky to have the collaborators that I had.
Now, this is how hard is it to incorporate comedy, like humor? Because there's humor in this movie, and how is like how hard is that to incorporate in when you're working with deaf actors?
Well, I wasn't sure how an ASL joke would work, right? Because I write the joke on the page, and then a lot of times you're like, okay, is this going to be funny when you sign it? I mean, Troy Kotzer. The amazing thing about sign language, it's so visual. So there is, Troy Kotzer, who's my actor who plays the father, is very funny to begin with. And his, you talked about the night we all went out to Pratty's. I watched Troy go out in this town and be standing at the bar at Pratty's, surrounded by a group of local guys who don't sign, and he's cracking people up.
So that was me. I was the guy that doesn't. So that's how we actually met the first time. And I did not know that they were deaf actors, and I'm trying to actually walk through the crowd, and it was a challenge to not. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Excuse me. It was. I didn't know, and you turned me on to the whole group and stuff. And I said, "Oh, okay." So now I was aware of it, but that's must have been so challenging for you.
I mean, it wasn't. It wasn't. I mean, I think everybody's like, "How did you do it?" And I think the amazing experience, not just for me, but for the town and for everyone we worked with and for Smash, to go out on the boat. He's like, I'm going to teach these guys to fish. Okay. And they're deaf. How do you want me to do that? And I'm like, figure it out, Smash. You can figure it out. They get out there. They're working alongside. He's picking the fish. He's, gesturing. He's showing which fish. He's got an interpreter there. They're coming up with signs for the fish because, there's a lot of local signs. Like there's a Boston accent. There's regionalisms to ASL. Yeah. So there's local signs like this is Gloucester. This is the sign. I'm going to teach everybody the sign.
Actually, I was going to ask, what's good morning, Gloucester? How would you say good morning, Gloucester?
Good morning. So this is good morning. No, it's not. I know.
That's a whole different side.
So it would be good morning, Gloucester. So that's
so good.
Good is out here.
Good
morning. No, not here.
No.
Yeah, there you go.
So the sun's rising.
The sun's rising, exactly. Morning. And then Gloucester this is a G, and it's a little like circle G. And that's a local sign that we didn't really know before. And this is Rockport. It's a sign for Rockport. It's like,
were they swearing at all in signs in the movie? Like, was there profanity in the signs?
Okay.
So
can I swear on that?
Yeah.
No, I'm being
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this was funny because figuring out how the humor works in the movie, there's a sex talk where the father gives like birds and the bees talk to his daughter. And the embarrassing part of it, it's so visual. Like sign language is so visual. So if you're saying wear a condom, you know what I mean? You're either doing this or he does this in the movie where he puts the condom on his. So it's a lot of the
Oh my
humor,
God. Yeah.
you know, is way funnier actually in
Yeah.
Sign than it would be if you just said it as a line.
Absolutely, Scotty. What I've got to tell you is it must have been fun for you at the preview when they're doing these signing jokes and everything that she just said she wrote on paper and it's out there. The laughter that was in the theater, you must have loved that.
I had
It must
never
have
heard it with an audience before, so
you
it was
mentioned
like,
that
you
before
know,
it started saying,
so
folks,
that-
I don't know what's going to
None
happen.
of that was forced. It didn't feel the least.
It
bit
was
forced.
amazing.
It felt
There wasn't someone with a
genuine.
sign that
No.
said laugh.
Nobody's.
it was amazing.
So I have a great
But in terms of dirty signs, I will say that so you know, we were trying to go for a PG-13 rating, so I could only say, I can swear here?
Of course, yeah.
I could
Believe me.
I could
Oh.
only say one fuck in the movie. You can only have one
Really?
fuck to be PG-13.
Really?
So it was very
How
debatable.
many shits can you have?
Shit you can say.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's legit.
But the
to
sign for fuck is interesting because this is fuck, but it could
Write that down for a
also, but it could
second.
also be have sex. It could also be make
But if they're
love.
lesbians, it's like this, though, right?
I mean, it's very graphic because you.
No,
that we,
That's what it is. What's the matter? Pat?
Actually, she was in L Word.
no, Orange is the New Black.
You were in it?
No, I wrote on it.
No,
You wrote on it?
oh, you were.
Oh,
No, the deaf mother.
Oh, Marley Matlin.
Marlene
yeah,
Mallon. She
yeah.
was a lesbian in L Word.
Oh, L word.
Oh.
Not Orange is the New Black.
No.
No, I wrote on Orange is the New Black
You did?
for 3 seasons. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
But anyway,
Sorry.
so the swearing, I remember Anne coming up to me, who's watching the sign, and you know, sometimes like ASL is really fast on screen. They're in the middle of the scene, and she's like, "There's so many secret fucks in this movie, Sean. Like you gotta,
Oh, really?
like, there's so many ASL."
like ASL ones.
Because Troy or Daniel, they'd be in the middle of a scene, and I'm like, "Oh, we gotta get that out." But it works because it's not. That sign can mean multiple things. It's sort of about how the.
Did you see the
probably
cast
shouldn't-
fucking with you though, like
What?
that? Like, did you see the cast, the actors, like trying to sneak them in?
I was catching them, and I was like, "Guys, enough with
Yeah, you
the."
probably
yeah.
had somebody doing a fuck count or something, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, my first
coulda hired me
movie,
for that.
my first movie, I remember them the same thing, like how many fucks are in the movie, and I remember I couldn't answer the question. I was like, I don't know how many fucks are in the movie. I was like, you know, and it was this thing of can we get down to one fuck, and so I was like, well, why don't you
My wife
count?
says the same thing. My wife says, "Can we get
Can we get
down?"
down to So I had my assistant count the fucks in the movie, my first script to Lula.
my favorite
And I
podcast.
said, can you tell me how many fucks are in there? Because we'll try to get down to one. And she came to me she was like, there's 46 fucks in the movie.
46.
And I was like, 40? That's almost like one on every other page, you know.
Yeah.
It's a really hard word to not use and like
Yeah.
trying to find alternatives to
Well,
it.
especially with fishermen too.
With fishermen and
naturally.
but
Yeah.
no, it was really interesting. Like, you know, sign is so visual. So a lot of times you're kind of having these discussions of like something that feels graphic is just descriptive. Because as soon as you're saying something descriptively, you know, you sign the sign for it and it looks like the thing that you're talking about. So anyway, this was all going back to your question about humor, which is some of it is so much funnier in ASL than it even would be written because it's so descriptive. So there's a scene in the doctor's office where the dad is experiencing some issues,
Erectile
itchiness.
dysfunction?
No.
Jock itch.
Oh, okay.
But he's trying to describe his symptoms, and it's just so funny
Oh,
watching
yeah.
Troy describe the
Oh, wow.
symptoms because he's, you know, my balls, like everything he's doing, they're on fire. You know, it's like you're watching the whole thing and you're like, this is great. So anyway, Troy's incredibly funny. He had us all in stitches the whole time. There would be dramatic scenes where my cast was like, stop, I can't stop laughing because he was always messing with people. He's an amazing, funny actor.
So are we up to the caliber of a panel at cons? I mean, is this like the
This
Q
is more
and
fun.
A?
This is more fun
Scotty,
than
you've exceeded the number of
We get
questions.
that all the time.
Can other people ask
I
questions?
just want to know one thing. Because
Yes.
the music person here,
yes.
how did you have that thought to bring music into it and use the chorus? Because that was some very touching scenes and some very funny scenes too.
Well, we had it was a scene. We used a real.
Put me right down.
We used a real choir from Berkeley. So we went and we wanted to have this, you know, choir that was supposed to be a Gloucester high school choir. we went down, we found these Berkeley kids who could be a choir. And then, of course, I'm like, you guys are too good to be at Gloucester High School choir. Like, I think we could have a couple stars in there, but maybe not everybody is sounding that good.
Yeah.
So then we sort of found other kids to, like, you know, layer in who felt a little bit more like they were just kids that liked, you know, the activity, but maybe weren't so great. But the music, I had a great music team, and finding those songs is a big deal because you know, music is expensive in movies. And so I wrote in a Marvin Gaye song. I'm like, we're going to get a Marvin Gaye song. And we ended up being able to get it. And, but it was a really cool thing to have. And the balance of these quiet ASL scenes with the music scenes, I think, is a really fun way to keep the energy going.
You know, it's all part of that. Where Pat and I were saying, it was a family type of thing.
Yeah.
And not only on the boats, but the family themselves, and then the family with the music. And so many people were like, you know, rooting for that situation and stuff.
Yeah.
So you really touched all the aspects. It was wonderful.
Jim,
My time is
Jim,
done.
can you move to that middle seat so that the camera can have something to focus on
Okay.
just until the boss gets back?
Right.
What
Story of my life.
the
Seat
word
filler.
that
Seat
Scotty
filler at the
uses-
Oscars at the same Sundance Film Festival. Just like the parking lot attendant.
I'm sorry. Was there a response or a rebuttal?
A
His
rebuttal to
comment?
which one?
His comment. Music. What were you saying?
Well, no, I just said the family and all the music. I just never thought with Gloucester and music and the fishermen, it was all three different aspects. And I was sitting there first going, this is touching all of me. And I said that to you when I met you. I said, you did it all. You got me there. You know,
Thank
it was
you.
great.
I mean, it was sort of, there were the three really distinct aspects of the movie. There was sort of the deaf culture aspect, and then the music, and then the fishing community. And I felt like each of those, you know, was sort of creating like a whole, we had to sort of look at them as their own project. And, you know, how do we create accessibility on set? How do we record music live and get these kids actually singing? And Amelia, my lead, had an amazing voice, but was not a trained singer. Like, she'd never taken a singing lesson.
Wow.
So, you know, we
Really?
had, yeah,
You would never
I
know.
know. I mean, her voice opened up so
Holy-
much.
And
We
your
had her
music
working-
teacher,
Yeah.
that actor. By the
Oh,
way,
so
did he
fun.
come to
Love
the
him.
Did he come to the premiere? Was he there?
No, he's
Okay.
Eugenio Derbez, who plays the music teacher, who's like the biggest star in Mexico. So he's like the Tom Cruise of Mexico.
He did
And
a wonderful job.
He's so funny and he's so great. And he came.
I can relate as a music teacher.
Yeah.
What he was doing and working hard and saying that, being firm, but he was also understanding and stuff.
And there's like a tough love element to, like, I think the great teachers I had in my life who kind of don't let you, like, if they see your potential and they see you're not working up to your potential, there's a kind of harshness to them that I think was fun to explore, because it was kind of drawing on like the great
That's
teachers
realistic.
in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we're going to give a shout out to Mile Marker, we're going to give a shout out to Cape Ann Movie Theater.
So,
too.
yeah.
You know, you can't judge a book by its cover, because you would never know how nice that theater is
You're right.
until
You're right.
you
Really
actually
nice
go in.
seats inside. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, and I didn't know, it's like you're the local theater, and,
Yeah.
and I, you know, we were talking about where we wanted to screen the movie, but it felt really important to screen the movie in Gloucester. We shot, you know, we used the marina, like that's where we went
Yeah.
out every day to see. That's where we, you know, came in with our boats to have lunch. And so it was like doing it in the place that we shot it,
Yeah.
and having people not have to drive out to the mall to go see the movie.
Yeah.
And
It was
be
a
able
great
to,
size room for that screening, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't too big. It wasn't it's not cavernous.
You know, what made it
So
really
intimate.
special too, Chris, was when she said that because of COVID down in LA, they can't have this the premiere down there.
Yeah.
And she said, "Folks, you're in."
Bingo.
And everybody started cheering, and popcorn started flying, and everything. Everybody was
Well,
real
because I,
excited.
you know, when I'm here now. I actually ended up buying a house in Gloucester with
Oh,
my
great.
mom after we shot the movie
Awesome.
here, because I love the town
There
so
you go.
much.
There you go.
So my mom, you know, my parents are using it more than I am, but
Yeah.
we came for the summer, and so we were here, and I'm like, well, I'm in Gloucester. I want to have a screening in Gloucester. I didn't realize that our LA premiere was going to end up being canceled because the Delta variant is exploding LA now. And so it really was this thing of, as soon as I realized that, and it was so special to screen the movie here, because it was all the crew could come, you know, and we got to be in the place where we made it, and the people from the town who helped me make the movie, and you know, Angela and Nina Gropo. Everyone knew each other, and it was just very cool, I think, to have that experience. And yes, it was like, this is the premiere, basically. So
That's
I'm
awesome.
glad to have that.
Pat, I saw a couple questions earlier. Any specific questions that
Paul Gamber
the
had
audience?
one.
Yeah, Paul
let me
Gamber
go
asked
back
about
and-
trailers
Hi,
when
Paul.
you when you were talking about the $25 million not going in your
something
pocket.
about residual income and production costs.
I mean, it's still so. How does that work? Apple buys your movie, movie. Do you, or do others collect based on viewership?
It's all a tricky, and the streamers are
Is
a
it?
whole new world,
Okay.
because I think you used to get like a box office bonus if the movie did really well at the
Right.
box office, but now it's kind of all being redefined. So I think
Oh.
there's a lot of now conversation about how does the cast who has points or back end on the movie, or how does all that play out. So it's definitely, I think streamers have created a whole new world for that.
Yeah. Were there any other
Moving
questions, Pat?
it over there.
Well, it was
I have a
Academy Award.
did we do the death row sub yet?
No, we have not.
I would be remiss. Would you be
There were
remiss?
some questions
I
about
would be remiss.
which one was Chris, so we described that for
There were
John.
people that were confused about where's Chris.
Yes,
Oh, Chris. John doesn't recognize me with my glasses.
I see. Okay.
I see he was making fun of my pink shirt too.
No, he didn't.
Well, I think in the most recent post, scroll down.
Oh my goodness, you guys, right here. That was Betty Brooks Graver.
Oh, no.
No,
Anyway,
we don't need to.
Betty
Listen,
Brooks.
I want to talk about the death row sub.
yeah, let's do
You
that.
do?
I would be.
All right.
I would be remiss.
Well, maybe we already asked her, Joe, when you were working.
I got the question from Scotty.
Well, Scotty left too.
I'm a team player, Chris.
So,
If it doesn't happen,
You're
don't
trying to
confuse her.
sabotage us.
so Jim and I asked the question when the both of you.
Lay it
I
on
don't
her.
believe
She's
you.
waiting.
What was
We're
it?
wasting-
Waiting, guys. What's his question? Don't keep me in
We're
suspense.
wasting
My
valuable
God.
time.
So the 2-part question.
Yes.
So you just tipped your hand that you've never seen the podcast before. It's not like you're busy at all.
We
It's
went
not
on
like you're a busy
Sundance.
person. You're just running around the country selling films and making movies, writing, directing. Death row sub, death row meal. You're on death row.
Okay.
That's the premise.
Yes.
You can identify with this. Orange is the New Black writer. Warden comes in. Tomorrow's your day. Says, we're going to get you a sub from any sub shop on the planet. But it can't be homemade. What sub shop are you going to, and what is the actual order?
Virgilio's the St. Joseph.
Yeah.
Boom.
Boom.
They're just stacking.
Although I
just
switched.
stacking.
hang
I
on.
switched because I used to have the one with the sun-dried tomatoes and prosciutto.
North End.
The
That's
North
what I
End.
get.
So when I was making the movie, I was so obsessed with the North Ender that I would the crew would eat lunch and I'd be like, Virgilio's sub please, and have someone run off, a PA run off to get me a Virgilio's. So I was on that one, but I've switched to the St. Joseph. It's
That is the top. That is the
It's the top
absolute
vote.
because
top
it's like
choice.
classic old school Italian. So,
Yeah, and they do it well. The bread makes it.
And you can't get that in LA. Anything
No,
even
right.
close.
Do you
No one
spend a lot
even
of time in
knows
LA?
what that is. I live in LA.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought you seem like so naturally like a local.
Well, you missed it, but I said I
Yeah,
bought a
you
place
missed-
here with my mom. So
I like
yeah,
LA compared to here.
It's okay to drop
It's
a
on
fuck.
fire all the time now.
Yeah.
So
But we're getting the residual. We get the smoke over here.
I mean, LA is definitely you feel like in terms of long-term investment in a place that will last on
Yeah,
this planet.
always,
LA is feeling more and more like
That's the first
there's
one.
fire season now that goes on for months where you can't leave the house because the air is so bad. So I love the people in LA. I actually have a really good community in LA. I love our house. I love my friends, but I'm feeling more and more East Coast and spending the summer here in Gloucester and having this house in Gloucester. My husband doesn't want to leave. My kids don't want to leave. Everybody's.
It's magic.
My husband went striper fishing yesterday
Nice.
and caught some enormous striper. He's
Wow.
just like he's in heaven. He's like, I don't want to.
It's
Get out of
magic.
here.
It's
Yeah.
magic. I'm telling you.
Do you live next to anybody famous in LA?
In LA?
Yeah.
No, we live in Eagle
Like
Rock,
Justin
so we
Bieber.
live in a low key. We're sort of outside a little bit of Hollywood. I've purposely moved out of.
Well, you wouldn't want. Does anyone really live in Hollywood? I mean, like, isn't Hollywood kind of a dingy
You
place?
move to Hollywood when you first get there when you're in your 20s and you're like, oh, I got to live in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And like you move to, West Hollywood or Hollywood. And then I feel
Swingers.
like as you start to learn the town, you're like, maybe I'll just get a little bit outside of this. So we live kind of east side LA, which is hip. It feels Brooklyn-y. It feels like not as like sceney as
Yeah.
the rest of.
I'd be remiss if I didn't go to the second part of my question: death row meal. So
Okay.
it has to be a restaurant, not home cooked.
Oof.
What restaurant and what is the meal? Your last one.
No, you don't have to eat healthy.
You don't have to worry about carbs.
Thank you.
Because it's over tomorrow.
I'm going to go sushi.
Oh, nice.
I'm gonna go sushi and like Nozawa maybe. There's a chef Nozawa in LA who has a place.
Oh wow!
I would maybe have him show up outside my cell.
Yeah.
He could maybe make it right there.
Nice.
And then I
Nice.
could just have
Locally, we have a guy named Sushi Sang.
Yeah.
Sushi Sang Lee. He's the shit.
Yeah, so we can introduce you to him. You don't need
TJ
to
came
plug
over
in.
the other. TJ is my neighbor now, and he came over.
is that where you
got
live?
the harbor master
Over
as
there?
my neighbor on Denison, and he came over with like fresh tuna tartare that he'd made. It was very like sushi. I mean, it was
Oh,
amazing.
good stuff.
Whole plate. I think that guy gets
That's
a lot
cool.
of free fish.
Well, he goes out there himself too, so he catches
Diving for lobsters.
Yeah,
Scallops.
scallops.
Yeah, taught my kids about the tickle stick with the lobster, how
The
you get
tickle
them
stick.
out. They were very excited about the
Yeah,
tickle
do
stick.
you know about the
I
tickle
don't know.
stick?
What's the sign for tickle stick?
I don't know. We could come up with
We
it.
can come up with a sign.
Yeah.
Oh, the
Let's
sign.
okay. Wait.
The word we use.
I'm gonna stop you guys right now before this goes off the rails because I know you guys. You
What are you talking
savage
about? There's
animal.
one word that
Well, this is
Scotty
lobster.
uses a lot, and that's poop.
That's not
So
my
how
word.
do you?
That's not my word.
What's the sign for
I'm
poop?
trying. I'm trying, Sean. I'm trying so
That?
hard.
I mean, that's the most perfect sign for that.
So is that
I
the
wish
same
you
like
had
shit?
That's not
Shit to him.
that would mean masturbating to me.
No.
No,
No, you're like no,
one
not
shot.
for a
you're
woman,
done.
for men. maybe.
One
Here's
shot.
the guy
you're
who
done.
said we were going off
Yeah,
the
what?
rail.
Wow,
No, it was
you
because
are
we
an
have to-
easy.
Well, you
I'm with you.
Just
missed.
one stroke.
You missed.
And
Oh,
now it's
Session
time
joke.
for your fart joke.
no.
Why don't you do
It
your
wasn't
fart
a long
joke?
session.
No.
My fart joke?
Yeah, so
Okay,
you
well,
talked
it's in the movie.
Since we
and-
talked
No,
about it.
no. If it's in the movie, because you have
It
to watch
doesn't
the movie.
ruin anything. It was just Troy, who plays the father, so Frank comes in and he sits at the table, and the scene is that Ruby is sitting and her family's incredibly loud. Like they're deaf. They don't know how much noise they're
Right,
making. The
that's-
dad's scraping the grill. The mom's banging around the kitchen. They're being incredibly loud. She's trying to do her homework. And the dad comes in and sits down at the table and he farts. And she's really pissed. And she hits him. She's like, "You're disgusting." And he says, "Do you know why God made farts smell?" And she says, "Why?" And he says, "So deaf people could enjoy them too."
Oh.
So
I like that.
that's his.
That's
That's
good.
the dad. So that shows you the character of the dad and their relationship. It's a really fun character.
Speaking of farts, one of my topics is fart related. So it would be okay if I asked you.
We tried to
So-
keep this. I had a talk with everybody beforehand. Said you're a very
With
prestigious
a
guest.
lady coming.
Not to
No,
go down this
I-
route.
she-
He
I didn't
can't
get to
help-
talk.
He couldn't help himself.
No, this is one of the topics, and since we have the fart expert, I'm trying to get
Oh,
someone's
fart's the
opinion.
best sign, you guys. It's the best sign.
Oh, that is kind of.
We got listen. Next time we're at the nest, this will be it. So the next time we're at the nest, right? We're gonna go like this. We're gonna ask people. This would be a bar. This would be a great bar.
Yeah,
And you go
Yeah.
up to people and say, "Do you know what this means?"
yeah, or this,
Or this.
or this,
Yeah.
or this.
They'll stop. What was
No,
Yeah,
Wait.
you missed it.
you missed it.
Oh.
See,
Yeah.
fisting? They have a sign for fisting.
Joe, she's a lot of fun. You're the only one that's not being fun here today. Everybody's having
I'm
a great
just
time.
trying. I'm just trying.
Come on, like Howard Stern.
Oh, God. Luckily, we didn't go to camera 2 on this.
Stop. No. All right. No, explain to me what the fisting one is.
here's my fart question.
Okay.
So when men go into a men's room and they're standing at the urinal going pee-pee,
Yep.
some men feel very comfortable just letting
Oh, the
their
pants
gas
down.
out.
Oh,
no, not the
fart.
pants down, farting. I do when I go to the urinal. I do everything not to fart because I think it's kind of
It
embarrassing.
seems rude.
It seems rude.
Right.
So I was curious for the men in the room. How many of you feel comfortable going to a urinal and farting?
Inquiring minds, I don't know.
I know. I'm so curious.
No,
I
well,
go
this
first.
applies to females too. You can
This
answer
shows
this.
up in a future
Well, that's
movie.
true.
I'm trying to think. I think everything is situational for me. Like if I'm in a party and I know there's loud music and stuff like that, and I can let it rip in the middle of the party, I'm gonna let it rip.
You're just crop dusting.
Oh,
instead of
crap.
farting. Walking through the room
And then,
really
and then
fast.
I'll point to my wife. I'll say, "Kate,
How do you do
let's
crop
talk."
dusting?
I don't know crop dusting. Clean. I don't know. I don't know how you do that. Maybe a plain fart.
What's your? So you asked the
I
question.
do everything I can to
Not
hold it in,
Yeah.
or at least squeak it out so that it's not loud.
Like you're at least trying to not like.
Yeah, but some guys.
I'm with Chris on that one. I try to at all costs avoid it. However, if I'm in a public restroom and a guy lets one go, I'm laughing like a 2-year-old. I'm like, just like, I let the guy know that I heard
Isn't that where you're
You know?
supposed to let it go, though? I mean, come on.
It's true. It's a bathroom.
Yeah, but it's more See, here's the thing. This is the whole thing. In the party,
Yeah.
and there's loud music, no one has to know. But if you're in the bathroom, there's one guy next to you, you're both doing the pashadi. But then it's very personal. That guy knows you just didn't give a fuck. You just let it rip right in front of him. But over there, there's no blame is placed.
But then you're looking at the guy the rest of the party. When you both walk out, he's the fart guy.
That's why I'm saying it's better to let it rip in the middle of the party where no one knows.
So both of you.
As long as there's loud music.
I would say you're taking down a lot of people at the party versus taking down the one guy in the bathroom. I would say you're more anonymous, but you're sort of,
Did you hear that saying deny, deflect, and reaccuse?
Bang report. We're going to go on.
Yeah.
What do we have in the works for you next? What's coming next for our Sundance award winner? How many awards was it again? 4?
4 awards.
4 awards?
Yeah.
What's next on the table for you?
Well, I have a couple of movies that I'm writing. One of them that I'm really excited about, I don't know if you guys saw the movie Crip Camp, but there's a character in it. I got very involved with the deaf community and the disability community through making this movie. I realized there's a lot of stories that need to be told because there's very few representations of this in a way that's funny and fun, and these characters
and normalizing
are normalizing, and they swear and they have sex and do drugs or whatever the rest of us are. And so there's a woman, Judy Heumann, who was probably the foremost disability rights activist. She was a part of getting the ADA passed, and she's the reason we have curb ramps and the reason that the public transportation is accessible and she staged a sit-in 1977. The 504 protests, where a group of 100 disabled people took over a building, and they held the building while the FBI tried to flush them out. In 1977, they held it for 30 days, and the Black Panthers showed up and brought food in, and all these kind of different groups showed up, and it's an amazing story. So I'm so excited. I'm working with Judy to write that story.
I Am Human.
Yeah.
Being Human is the name of her memoir, and she's a character in Crip Camp, which was up for an Oscar last year, which is a documentary.
Wait, you said Crip Camp. Can you spell? Is it
Crip? CRIPCAMP, and it was a group. It was a camp. The movie's about this camp, that was for kids with disabilities in the 70s, and basically, but it became this like wild camp where a bunch of hippies were the counselors, and these kids were like smoking weed for the first time and having experiences, and so it was the first time they've been really sheltered kids.
I would cast Matthew McConaughey in that one.
No, we would not.
Why would
Maybe
I
as a counselor,
Yes,
but we're
yes.
inauthentic casting. He's not going into a wheelchair. So anyway, I'm just excited about that movie. It's really fun. The sit-in became like Woodstock.
Are you concerned a little bit about being typecast as a director, as the person that deals with disability things all the time, or do you think that is that a vehicle for you to like, oh, she's the person that writes about people overcoming these kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm not, because I think I have a lot of other projects. I'm writing another movie that's a romantic comedy, and it's kind of a sci-fi romantic comedy. I have TV projects. I think I don't worry about that stuff. I follow the stories that interest me, and I follow the stories that move me and the people that move me. And it's like, you know, it's interesting, you know, I shoot in Gloucester and you become attached to a place and you're like, oh, there's all these fishing stories. You know, what are the other stories happening in the fishing community here? And I think you just follow it's hard to make a movie. You spend years of your life making a movie and it consumes everything. So it's sort of about like, what do I give a shit about?
Yeah.
What do I want to put in the world? What do I feel like the world needs? And so
here's the thing, like for being a blogger, right? So this is just, you know, it's an ancillary kind of thing. But when someone asks me to do a story about something, if I'm not interested in it, like the heart that I put into that, like the effort that goes into that is 1/10 of something that I'm passionate about, and like, you know, that is in my wheelhouse.
And it takes the same amount of time to make a bad thing as a good thing. So you're like, well, you know, and it's interesting now because, like you said, I just had the Sundance that every filmmaker dreams of, and suddenly I'm in a position where I'm like being sent all these scripts and big studio movies, and it's like, but you read them and you're like, I don't know, like if this doesn't feel like it's adding to the conversation that we need to have as humans, like, do we need another, you know? And I'm not saying that movies can't do that. If you look at like, you know, Black Panther, Wonder Woman, I mean, there's big superhero movies that are changing the conversation and they're super exciting. But at the same time, it's like, you know, there's a lot of entertainment that's just there to be entertained.
Will you direct movies that you don't write? Or have you directed that you haven't written?
I've directed a TV a bunch, and I'm not a writer on that. You know, usually that's another writer, and I'm coming into a show. So yes, I will totally, because my bandwidth as a writer. I mean, I'm trying to write 4 different things now, and oh my god, like I'm especially being on like Goose Cove, and I'm sitting there, and like my kids are out kayaking on the thing, and I'm sitting there with my laptop, like oh my god, I just want to like go out there, but
summer. Well, the weather has helped.
The weather has helped. Thank you, Gloucester.
For one person in the city,
Gloucester.
One person in the city, the shitty weather,
for ruining our summer, so that I could feel less bad about having to work all summer. But no, I mean, I think it's, you know, I can't do it all. I feel like and also sometimes like there's an interesting voice out there that's not mine, but I think the story is being told in a really cool way, and so, you know, whether it's having collaborators or teammates that I'm working on.
So when they actually send you scripts, do you feel like the scripts that you're getting, they actually have you in mind as a director for your vision, or do you think that they're just trying to get their movie made by somebody?
It's a combination. I think sometimes it's like an indie movie that's like, oh, if I now attach you, that'll be helpful in getting the project greenlit. And I think sometimes with studios now, it's like, you know, they're looking for like, who's the next voice or filmmaker that we want, and you're coming in, and that process is a very different process. I mean, I was in the running for Black Widow when it was happening, and I went through so many steps with Marvel of making showreels and storyboards, and I mean, it was like, you know, 5 times going back and pitching again and again and again and moving up through the studio. So it's a different process when you're trying to get it.
Yeah, and at this point, just with this, like these accolades now, like never mind anything else, like that is currency.
Yes.
That's currency. Like we have, you know, this 4 times Sundance winning director directing this movie. So you're going to have X amount. So what, as far as advertising that movie, that's currency.
And I think it's also like getting the harder stories made. You know, I mean, I told you I spent 8 years wandering around town with my script for Tallulah trying to get it together, and I kept getting actors together, and then they would fall out, and then getting other, you know, or getting financing together, and then we didn't have the last piece, and so I think knowing that you can get a movie made, you know, and like that's a really exciting thing. So then it's about like choosing worthy stories that might have a harder time getting off the ground without you know, championing them.
Right, without that cash.
I know, like the LA thing. I've watched Entourage. And it's all glorified, but it actually gives you a little bit of insight as to the process of what happens in trying to do the scripts and getting different projects. Like you were speaking on people dropping out and financing and all that stuff.
I mean, it's like herding cats trying to get a movie together. It's because all the elements you're like, oh, this and cast is sort of worth, you know, a lot of it. And it's changing a bit, but used to be foreign sales model. So it was almost like, if you get this star in your movie, they're worth this much money. Then a bank will give you a loan to go make your movie because you have Brad Pitt and he's worth this much. And so then you can go out and get your millions of dollars because the bank will see that as, it's a very, financing a movie is a very risky thing. And so there's a lot of kind of processes in place. And so when you're trying to make a movie that has 3 deaf actors in the leads, and I knew that I wanted to discover those actors, and my lead character was a 17-year-old girl, and so she wasn't going to be a huge star. And so it was like, I needed to find people that really believed in the story and believed in me, who were willing to put money on the line without George Clooney in the movie, so that, they knew that they would, what was a risk.
You had Marley. Marley was a big.
One of our viewers is wondering if you're an actress as well as a writer and a director.
I started out as an actress, so I went to Carnegie Mellon for acting, and then moved to New York and worked as an actress and did guest spots.
That's a good question, John. Thank you.
Yeah, and
what would people have seen you in?
What was I?
What have you done?
Law and Order.
Oh.
The Sopranos, and then I got cut out of it. That was devastating. That was one of my first jobs. Was a scene with Tony Soprano on The Sopranos, and I remember having all my friends come to a party to watch it, and then it wasn't there, and I was like,
wasn't that a Friends episode?
One of my childhood friends, Jason Cahill, was a writer on The Sopranos. Grew up on the back shore.
Well, and then you're like, oh, I'll never do that. So now as a director, I always try to reach out to my cast to tell them if I cut them out of the movie. And I,
oh, that's interesting.
My parents are really funny because my first movie, I put them in as extras, like in the background. They were visiting me in New York. I was like, oh, you guys can stand on the street and just look at your phone like you're lost looking for directions. And they were deep in the background. Then I ended up, and my daughter was also, she was 2 at the time, and she was in the scene. So I end up cutting the scene from the movie. So my dad, whenever he introduced me or talked about my movie, he would be like, this is my daughter, Sian. She made a movie called Tallulah. She cut us out of it. And I'm like, Dad, you were like out of focus in the background.
Right. You're using prime lenses.
So this movie, I was like, I got to put my dad in the movie, and I got to put him somewhere that will never be cut from the movie. So it's a very key scene in the movie. My dad is sitting very close to my actors. So he's in many shots, my mom and my dad, and we were shooting the scene. There was like 300 people. We're in the concert scene, and my dad is just looking straight into camera. Like every time we roll, he's just looking right at the camera. And I'm like, Dad, and I'm on set in front of all, I'm like, Dad, stop looking down the barrel. I wasn't
undressing her dad.
And my mom's like, oh, he was. I saw him. And I'm like, oh my God. So I had to put my parents in a very prominent spot. And then my daughter was also, who was 6 at the time, was also in a scene in the movie, and I cut that scene again. So now she's like, my mom's cut me out of 2 movies. And
I can't believe you've done as much as you've done and be a director with 2 young children.
Oh, it's hard. Intense. I mean, my first movie, when I shot Tallulah, I was 6 months pregnant and I had a 17-month-old.
Oh my God.
So that was
even
super hard. It's a great way to shame your PAs when you've got a belly out to here and you've got these 21-year-old kids being like, this is such a long day. And I'm like, oh, is it? Is it a long day for you? Is this hard for you?
Try to carry this.
And I actually gave birth the night that I locked picture on that movie. I was in the editing room out to here, and we locked picture. It was our last day. And I joked to my editor. I was like, okay, I'm off to have a baby now. And he's like, bye, go have your baby. And I literally left the editing room, went home, and just had my first contraction, had the baby that night.
That's crazy.
It was so, and I texted him like, you will not believe I'm actually having the baby.
Were you counting the time between your things?
My contractions?
Yeah.
That second baby. That second baby was like getting punched in the face and then just getting punched in the face again. There was no wind up. That was. But then I was back in the editing room 2 weeks later with my newborn and trying to finish the movie. And I mean, it's definitely balancing those 2 things is really challenging. And that's the other reason I work on things I care about, because I'm like, if I'm going to have to be away from my kids, and then it better be for something good that they're going to be really proud of. And
on behalf of Good Morning Gloucester, we have a very nice gift to give you. This is a 40-cent sticker that we would like you
this
to
is incredible.
Put on. Yes,
wow,
I mean, not too many people get those unless you.
If you have a Yeti cup,
yeah,
Oh, do we meet it already?
No, not
If
yet.
I sold this on eBay, how much would I
It
get?
probably millions.
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 Right,
but we
25
ask that
million.
you not.
I would sign it first, maybe possibly.
No, they busted my balls. This is all inside. They busted my balls because we have X amount of those.
How many?
Well,
How many?
Sean.
We originally
500.
Sean.
500.
We originally got 500.
500. If you guys said 10, I would feel honored.
No,
500?
No.
Oh, no, I meant
Way
40.
to make her feel special.
This is the point. The point is that we're down to like 40 or 50 of them, and I just say to them, don't give them to a little kid on the street
Right.
that's going to stick it on their forehead and it's gone.
Watch
It's gonna-
this. Watch
No,
this.
no.
I'm going to do it. Right now. Right now.
I'm proud of you. Thank
They
you.
work
So
great.
mad at
Just
me.
rip the Band-Aid
On
off.
my forehead, my sweaty
Why do you
forehead.
hate
right
That's what he
My sweat-
She's going home and giving it to her youngest.
Why am I being tortured? Like
It's right here. I'm going to wear it home. I'll
But
wear
if-
it all around town today.
If by any chance that could make it into your next movie, we really
Yeah,
appreciate
yeah.
it.
Hey, Dave Marciano, it's in all the shots on Wicked
Wicked
Tuna
Tuna.
because it's on the back of his boat.
Yeah.
So.
And now they're got to compete against Wicked Tuna for.
No, that's a rising tide lifts all boats.
Right.
Because the more of
Right.
that happens, the more
Yeah.
accolades, more people get invested in the city, and they want to do good things. I'm gonna, we got a SAISY. You know what a SAISY is?
No.
Yes.
Oh.
Self-addressed stamped envelope. SAISY.
Oh.
Now you know. I didn't know either.
You didn't
I
watch
didn't know
Zoom?
this.
You didn't watch Zoom growing up, or you
No.
weren't from this area?
Why did
Zoom?
they use the term SAISY?
Zoom, yeah. Zoom review. And at
No.
the
Wait,
end,
this sounds Zoom found.
Zoom,
My
Zoom,
parents,
Zoom,
yes,
Zoom,
yes.
yeah.
Now I
Yeah.
got it.
at the end,
He never gets the cadence right. So you didn't.
nah.
No, you can't do the Bruins theme song.
Nah,
either.
nah.
And he fucks up the cadence every fucking time. He ruins the whole mojo.
The mojo.
So this one came in. People write in and they want stickers. So hi Joe, I was hoping to get 2 sticker die cuts.
Oh, that's 80 cents. That's 80
Forget it.
cents.
Forget
Ew,
it.
I'll
80
sell
cents.
you mine, Susan.
I
I'll
feel
sell
like this
you
is a
mine.
setup. This might be a setup.
For a low price. My family would summer in Gloucester years back. Susan from Beach Haven, New Jersey. Susan Murphy, 2 stickers are coming for you. Just don't waste them. That's all I ask.
Don't stick them on your
And-
forehead, Susan.
No kids. No
And we have
kids.
a drawing for a prize.
Yes, we're gonna have a drawing for a prize. Jimmy, this is.
Has this inspired you? Has today's meeting inspired you to create any sort of comedy?
She's gonna do all
With that
5.
said,
No.
I mean, I feel like this could
Yeah.
could just be, or it could be like a horror movie. Like this goes wrong, we all get stuck in here. We start.
I think Chris wants to know, is this a pilot right now?
Well, that's what Paul Gamber suggested, seeing a movie about the GMG evolution in the works.
Yeah, the world about blogging and podcasts.
The next time you come on,
Yes.
I'm gonna ask you.
You think there'll be a next time?
Yeah, of course.
Well, depends on what you do
Well,
with
you
that
had so
sticker.
much fun today. Yeah. Kevin O'Connor, which was the host of This Old House, which is our guest about a month ago, gave us a signed hat. This is worth many millions of dollars.
Is that
And this is going to be one of the. If you share the see, it's focusing on you. You as a director, you know the camera. Well, you're not. Oh, I can't lock that focus. This is. Take my word for it. That is the This Old House logo.
I think they can see it.
Sign. No, they couldn't because it was, no. It's focusing on your face.
I can go to camera.
See if I go like this. Oh,
There you
see.
go. I
See?
just gotta hide.
Hey, Joe, I just got a message real quick before you do that. I want to say hi to Warren Watt and Karen Hansen watching from Cape Cod at their cottage right now.
God bless them.
Nice.
I love my people. And this is from Drift Soap Company. It's a bag of like very all natural soaps that won't give you itchy balls. So we got that going for us. Cam, how many shares do we have?
17.
17 shares?
Yeah.
Okay.
17 is a big number.
Yeah, that's a good number.
We didn't even read any of the comments, people. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff out there.
You don't want to kill the momentum. I mean, we have a Sundance
Oh, yeah,
director and writer here.
Well, I know, but we're North Shore.
We'll go,
Best of
you
North
know,
Shore.
you know, what,
Get in
you know
there,
what we
get
will
in there.
do? We'll go through and we'll give shout outs to all the people that checked in with us because we love it when people write
I
comments.
tried to do a roll call. Joey blew it off.
I know. I heard that. I saw that.
Why are you trying to sabotage me? Patrick McNally, Peter Tarantino, Mike Coder, John Bergman, Michael Bertolino, Paul Ryan O'Brien, Paul Gabber Jr. didn't come today. We asked him to come. He didn't want to come. Ed Collard,
Hey, Ed.
multiple-time winner.
Oh, yeah.
Ed Collard wins like every week. Go up more.
Peter Tarantino.
I did say Peter
Oh, you
Tarantino.
did.
Anna Fisher, Lisa Frontero Tilsey.
John Bird.
John Bergman's all over the place. Death Row Sub. Oh, we should mention, I would be remiss if we didn't mention that you put together a spreadsheet of all the Death Row sub and meal winners, and they can access that by the link you provided on the Facebook feed.
By request. By
Betty Brooks Graver. Betty Brooks Graver, how do I know that name? She private messaged me this week, and I said, you never comment, and she said she'd comment this week. So that was nice. Which is nice.
Which is nice. You get that goal.
Brenda Grimes Davis was with us. Where are we here? Arlie Pett. I'm sure this is very exciting. Karen Hansen. There's Karen. C.J. Kelly. Christopher Brady. I wonder if he's related to Tom Brady.
This is like the credits to a movie right now.
I know this is where people get up and
I have to make him happy. He shamed me into doing it. All right, forget that. All right, we're going back down. Susan Lunenberg Lobenberg Quaitman.
Getting added to the list.
Okay, so
now we have 18.
We're at
Hi,
20?
Scooter. Hi, Amy.
All right.
Oh, Gamber has a response, Joe. What happens when you tell a guest to come Sunday morning while they
When they were hammered drinking? Yeah, that might be the thing. Okay, first one. And the first person, when we call their name, first person to reply gets the first pick between the hat signed by Kevin O'Connor, host of This Old House, and the Drift Soap Itchy Ball Soap. Oh, I'm sorry.
We couldn't
I'm
hear
sorry.
that earlier. Number 4 is Chris Thompson.
I'm sorry.
Also a multi-winner.
Joe, you got to do the sign.
You gotta do-
Do the sign.
So Chris Thompson.
That's a bar. That's good. One more time. Give it to me one more time when I do the next one. Ready?
Number 11.
Number 11 is number.
Pauline Bresnahan.
Well, oh, nice. Our friend from Pauline's Gifts. There you go.
So if the fart's really long, do you have to leave your
Yeah,
hand
I mean, you
open?
can be expressive.
Can you go like
with
this?
The, yeah,
They got really
yeah.
short ones. Hold on, ready?
Yeah, you could have a
Here's
super
a short one.
windy.
It's the hat.
I have to.
And then the
Yeah.
smelly?
Yeah.
Oh, smells like
Smelly
Right.
is up there.
Where can people see CODA?
All right, CODA is opening August 13th on Apple TV, and it's also opening in theaters. It'll be at 6 theaters in the Boston area. It'll be at Gloucester Cinema. It'll be at the Coolidge. It'll be at a bunch of theaters around Boston. So, and I will tell everybody's like, Apple TV feels like people are like, oh, another streamer.
Ted Lasso.
$4.99, and you get Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso
Like,
just came
worth
out.
it.
Loaded.
So good. That
Get
show's so good.
Ted Lasso. That and what's the one? The Startup. But that's not on Apple TV. Those are my two
no,
recommendations.
one
Yeah.
with Jennifer Aniston was on there.
Was she naked? in
Morning show.
Morning
that?
show.
Oh, hey, now.
So I would tell
That was
people
good.
either get Apple TV, but also make your way to the cinema. I mean, Gloucester Cinema has been
Awesome.
hurting this year because of COVID.
Yeah.
It's so exciting to be back in a theater. The movie
Yeah, we're
is
gonna go back
fun
and
to
watch it
watch.
again.
Yeah,
All right. We
So-
got to wrap up. I got to give someone some bait. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Did you have fun?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Easy.
Not under.
I'll
No,
fumble. I'll fumble.
this is an
I'll
example.
fumble.
I saw her do
Guys,
that.
no.
fumble.
Here, just like from here. Thank you.
yes.
You. Yeah, this
Thank
is
you
a
to our
different thing.
guests.
So, G, what's G?
Listen,
Oh, Gloucester.
I have to
This
do-
is the
Get in there.
site
Get
for
in there. Get in there and do what you do.
How do you say
Chris,
no
what?
piping plovers?
Chris,
have
that one
Should I
right
go
there.
to 2?
No, because I like
Yeah,
this.
maybe she should.
Quick.
No piping plovers were injured in the making of today's podcast. Thank you.
Little town with big news. 411, come get the scoop. Wake up with Joe and the rest of his crew. It's good morning, Gloucester, to you. Oh, it's good morning, Gloucester, to you. I say